Hi there everyone, it is Artesia day 14 and it's my last day here. My name is Mickey and I know I spoke last night about a few things that the guards were saying and just a sense of desperation here among the refugees. And today I had a case where an individual from Guatemala, an educated woman, barely speaks Spanish, and during the interview of the credible fear interview, where she was unaccompanied by an attorney, she of course failed the credible fear interview, and in front of the immigration judge, before I could even let a word leave my mouth, the interpreter said, "This person does not speak Spanish." And of course I knew that, and that's how we were going to get the continuance, based on lack of communication, lack of notice, no translator. But the asylum officer who did her interview was in the room, which the judge couldn't see because we're doing all these hearings by televideo from Washington, from an itty-bitty tiny screen about the size of your laptop, and we're about 10 feet away. So the asylum officer, who shouldn't be there in the first place, is sitting over to the side taking notes. I was so rushed today that I didn't get a chance to object to it because we were moving so quickly, but the minute the translator said, "She can't understand anything we're saying," if that translator wouldn't have caught that, would the judge have deported her? If that translator wouldn't have spoken up, how could she gotten by an asylum officer? It's just shameful, shameful. So today I leave with regret. I'll be back down here because I've committed to doing a few individual hearings, particular social group cases for some pretty horrendous cases. Incidents that happen in Honduras and El Salvador, and these women have no one else to represent them. So yeah, I'll be back. And again, I urge any attorney that can come down here and represent them. It will change your life, because it's definitely changed mine. If you can donate or send any time down here, I'd recommend it. Have a good night. There you go. Well, this is Thursday evening. No, it's actually Friday morning. We just got done at the war room. It's about, I guess, getting close to 1 a.m. and the work's still not done. We had a full day. Everything, man. Surprise hearing at 8 o'clock this morning. Then a hearing at 1:30 that I'd actually been able to prepare with my client a couple of times. We were ready for it. God, they never came to get me. They never came to call that case for the hearing. So that one just missed her chance. She'll be scheduled next week, but she'll have to pick up with another attorney. That's kind of the way it goes in Artesia. You never know how your day is going to flow. What I saw today was a bunch of dedicated lawyers and paralegals who really, really want to help these folks. Saw beautiful children and lots of sad eyes. I don't think I've ever seen so many crying attorneys in one room. It's emotionally draining, and man, it's a lot of fun. So come on down and send your paralegals, your legal interns, your law students, and come down and help guide them through some defense of women who really, really need our help. Thanks.
Hey guys, it's Jackie again. It's Thursday and we've been here for about 5 days now. It's our 5th day. Today was really emotional for me, and it was because I had to translate for Angela actually, and I had to tell a client that we had tried our very hardest and submitted 2 motions to review her case, and that she had heard correctly from her embassy that she was going to be deported tonight. And it was hard to look at her. She was sitting down, and I already knew what the news were, and she walked over, and I think she was expecting us to tell her that we had somehow saved her and her children, and she was going to have a fighting chance of staying here. And so she sat down, and her kids were playful today. I had seen them yesterday. She has two really young children. They're maybe 3 or 4 years old. They're twins, beautiful curly hair. And today they were playful, and they were looking at me, and I was talking to them, and they were playing with these toy cars. And I had to tell her that we had done everything we could, and that she was gonna go back to her country, and her children were gonna be in danger. She was found not to have credible fear, and that's just hard to believe when you hear her story and read her story. She fled her country because they had murdered her husband, and the same people that had murdered her husband were coming after her and harassing her every time she left the house, and telling her they were going to kill her two boys to make her suffer. And because they were products of this man they hated and they stabbed to death. How that doesn't prove credible fear, how no one can believe that a mother that loves her children would be scared to lose them, and did everything she could try to get them to a safe place, and she ends up here. I don't know. Fortunately, there aren't any planes leaving tomorrow. She's still on the deportation list, but we have until Monday to do something about it. And it's just, it'd be really hard to have that conversation with her again if we're not able to do something. So I guess as attorneys and paralegals and volunteers, we can just hope for the best and fight for her. But I learned a tough lesson today.
It's Angie. This is Thursday. It is August 14th. Well, actually now I guess it's August 15th. It's day 5 in, I don't know what day it is. It's been another long day. We had few good things happen. A couple things like procedurally went a little bit smoother with some of the guards, and so that was a little bit better. I had a very difficult consult at the end of the day that kind of like crashed the day to a screeching halt. I met with this woman who I'd actually met with yesterday at the very end of the day. She had been asking and asking to see an attorney, and there had been all these issues with getting her to see us, and she finally was able to come see us. And she had been denied a nexus at credible fear on a case that she absolutely should have been granted credible fear. And she had an immigration judge review of her credible fear tomorrow, or I guess today, Friday. And she'd been begging to see an attorney, and they finally let her see an attorney yesterday at like 7. And so we scheduled her for appointment today to prep her. She has excellent, by excellent I mean horrifying, domestic violence asylum claim, years and years of abuse and stalking at the hands of her ex-husband, threatening with guns, beatings, all sorts of horrific things. And that's not even the bad part of the story. The bad part of the story is after we get done with that, her telling me about how when she got here, she's got this 6-year-old son, and he had like a cut or something on his arm that was infected, and they thought that he had some sort of virus, and so they wanted to seclude them to give him some medication so he wouldn't be contagious or spread it to anybody else. And so she thought that was, she was like, okay, that makes sense. So they put her and her son in a room that didn't have any toys or TV or coloring books or anything, and so the 6-year-old's going crazy for about 18 of the 24 hours, and that's about the time that the doctor finally came in to give him his dose of medicine. So the 24 hours that was supposed to be the time for the medicine to work didn't start until about 18 hours into the isolation. When the guards came to give her her food, the son was crying and he was hysterical, and they said, well, you're almost done, don't worry. And she told him about the doctor having just come and asked if they couldn't give her a room with a TV or at least some toys. They did do that, but 24 hours turned into 5 days in isolation, and they kept her in isolation for 5 days for no apparent reason. Her and her son weren't allowed to leave except to go to the bathroom. He couldn't go out and play. The only thing they had to do was watch TV. And they brought him their food. About day 4, she got sick with the stomach flu and started vomiting and having diarrhea. And so she would have to call the guards to come take her to the bathroom because there wasn't any bathrooms in the room that she was in, and they would not come take her immediately, and she would have to wait when she was vomiting and having diarrhea. And one time they told her that they weren't able to come pick her up, and she ended up having diarrhea in her pants, and she didn't have any other clothes to wear, and so she just had to be in this room with her kid, who was hysterical as well, covered in feces. And when the guards came and they opened the door, they started laughing at her. And then she had to walk across the camp place to the bathroom covered in feces. And then she didn't have any other clothes, so she had to take a shower and then cover up in a towel and walk back and wait for them to be able to find some clothes to bring her. And she's sitting there and she's crying and she's hysterical, and there's someone sitting like right next to him and someone sitting on the other side, and she's having to tell me this story, and she said it was the most humiliating thing that she had ever experienced in her whole life, and she was so ashamed that her son had to see her like that. And I'm crying and she's crying, and this is the kind of stuff that happens here, and this isn't like the only story of this type of thing. That was my day. So, this is why people need to come here, because they are throwing up roadblocks at every opportunity to just make this more and more impossible for these women to even have a chance to present their evidence and present their cases. And like, this person has not only a case that should have been granted a credible fear, but probably a winnable asylum case. And they're being railroaded by nothing less than what I think has to be purposeful. It's appalling, and it's embarrassing, and it is making me sick to my stomach to watch. And I'm glad that we're all down here, because they wouldn't have anybody. And someone needs to give them a voice. So, that was my day.